Today is the 19th of August 2017. I'm Keith Warr, and welcome to another episode of Homeless in Titusville. And today I have a very enlightened person who is homeless, and his name is Clint Gray.
Yes.
So Clint, how old are you?
56.
You're 56, and how long have you been homeless?
My homelessness has been intermittent. The longest period that I've been homeless for had been a year and a half, between 2013 and 2014. And then I've had other periods of multiple months at a time. Currently, this last stint, technically a few weeks, but prior to that, about a month. So all in all, I've been out now this round about 6 or 8 weeks.
So how old were you when you first experienced your first run of homelessness? How old were you?
Well, that would have been the 2013 instance.
Okay. And what was the cause of that homelessness?
I'd been released from prison as a felon, and while I was in prison, I lost everything I owned, including my wife and my home and all my possessions and my driver's license and my career, and there was nothing left to come home to. So I ended up pretty serious depression and ended up living in the woods for a long time.
What did you go to jail for?
That's a funny one. I was the president of a corporation that was forced into a collapse and a hostile takeover, and my partners took me out, and it was a long, drawn-out legal lawsuit. They bled me to death, and the collateral damage was that we were real estate developers. Some of the properties that their deposits were paid on were not refunded or delivered, and so 10 years after the fact, while on vacation with my children, my 3 grandchildren, my 3 children in Tennessee, I was picked up on a minor traffic infraction. I found out I had 3 grand theft felonies. I'd been indicted by a grand jury and never knew it.
And what company was this for?
My company's called USA Logs Incorporated, based in Kodak, Tennessee.
In Kodak? Did you say
Kodak?
Kodak.
Like camera, Kodak.
Oh, Kodak, Tennessee. Okay, wow. So what kind of experience do you have? Do you have a college degree in something, computer programming? Like, what kind of work experience had you had? Like, what got you into that position?
I grew up in my father's architectural mill workshop, literally from the time I was 5. My father was a master carpenter. He apprenticed me, 4th generation master woodworker. Some of this is a little hard to be talked about. At any rate, over the course of time, I built 13 different companies, most related to the sale and construction of marketing. I'm self-taught, graphic web designer, write business plans, do market research. I got into the specialized niche of the log home industry in the late 80s and during the 90s. And over the course of time, I went from being a guy who worked at the mill plant to a guy who designed the homes. I moved up through the ranks to selling homes, and moved up to the ranks to a log home distributor's position, and eventually had to start my own company because of the volume that I was doing, and became a real estate developer with my partners. And this is primarily throughout like East Tennessee and Western North Carolina and North Georgia.
And how much money were you making? Were you living the American dream, the houses, the cars?
I had a beautiful home on Crescent Beach, south of St. Augustine. I had multiple homes in the mountains, and I had everything my children and family could ask for. I probably did over $17 million in business in 5 years in that company.
Wow. So you had it all. What most people say is having it all.
Pretty much.
You had all the materialistic things.
Everything you could ask for.
Yeah. And so what kind of things were you struggling with on the inside, even though it looked like you had it all on the outside?
At that time?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people like myself have genetic disorder, predisposition, be susceptible to alcoholism. I started drinking very, very young. Was exposed to it very young, 5 years old. It was never anything anyone considered to be an issue for most of my life. I'm kind of a closet drinker. I'd be on the road on my business trips. It starts with Friday night dinners, and it's Sunday barbecues, and then next thing you know, you have a nightcap every night, and then you're having a cocktail at lunch, and you're aging and you're moving on, and that disease has a progression to it where you start becoming more and more dependent upon, you start changing your brain chemistry. Your receptors start requiring that, there's a level of tolerance that just gets elevated slowly over time, and you don't realize it until you begin to become trapped by it. And then it takes a life instance like having your best friend get in bed with the mafia and their decision to take me out and for me to lose everything I ever worked for. I built the world's largest log home showroom. I had the world's first super log home dealership. I had 7 full-scale log homes inside a 15,000 square foot facility that is still standing, and the homes are still there in Kodak, Tennessee. And it was after that I became very despondent. At first, I kind of enjoyed losing everything. I surfed for 6 months, drank beer, and was like, why the hell was I not doing this for the last 15 years, at least getting away and doing the things I really wanted to do? Because I was working 8 hours a week, was running 60 employees and building companies, had all this stuff that we're doing. And I thought I was doing it for my family. The truth is I was really doing it for myself. And it was my pride and my ego that prompted me to neglect a lot of things I shouldn't have been neglecting. And it caused me, once all of those possessions were gone, it's a little bit too much stress for my wife. Been with her for 25 years, and got involved heavily in the drinking and other things that we shouldn't have been involved with, so I ended up losing her. That was the breaking point for me. I became suicidal about 6 months. I have a background in commercial diving. I kind of was a parallel career that I always did, because the truth is I've always kind of hated carpentry, even though I'm really good. You can be really good at something and not love it.
I love it.
My love is in operating boats and commercial dive work, and then I'm very good at that. So I took the most dangerous dive jobs I could and did them drunk so I could die. But God's not fooled by that kind of behavior. It wasn't my time, so I ended up meeting a young girl and actually realized that maybe there was still life after, 43. I say young girl, she was a lot younger than I was, and eventually rebuilt and moved to the Keys, and I built a company called the Lionfish Control Coalition. It was kind of my first venture into nonprofits, and our goal was to develop a trapping system for lionfish, a specific trap that could be easily reproducible in third world countries. That could make it something that would be profitable to be able to harvest lionfish, because they're quite a delicacy. Long story short is that I was living on a yacht and had my Harley and had my Jeep and living the life in Key West, man, and had a little life or death experience that I won't go into a lot of detail on. I said, it's been a long time since I saw my kids, and so I drove up north to see them. Ended up getting picked up there and doing that time where I lost everything. So that brings you up to speed on my career and what I made and what I lost.
How do you feel you can ever get that back?
I don't want that back.
You don't want that back. And when's the last time you had seen your children?
I speak to my children every week.
You do? And do you speak to them by phone or in person?
They all left Florida. I'm here alone now.
So they're grown?
They're all grown. I have 4 grandchildren now.
Wow. And do you still have any kind of a relationship with your ex-wife? Okay. Well, any of them. Any of them. Are you friendly with any of them?
I have good references from most of my ex-wives, except the one that tried to kill me with my own gun. But I went through a series of trying to rebuild things, and I just don't do singleness really well, because you spend that many years to get married when you're a kid, and you grow up in that environment. You got family, and she had this huge family, and when I lost her, I lost like 150 of my best friends at once. And so I became very isolated and despondent over that. So the wives have kind of come and gone, and I'm finally really at a place where I've realized that it's best for me not to be. I need recovery in my life. I need recovery. I need recovery of my mind. I need recovery emotionally. I need recovery of my physical strength. I need some recovery of my financial stability. I hear these guys talking all the time out here about how they want a woman, they want to be in a relationship. Homeless people have nothing to offer, anything other than physical protection, so it's a whole lot kind of like a weird pimp relationship where, you know, you get some protection, you know, for benefits of friends.
You told me that most people that are homeless and on the street and alcoholics, that they're broken. Explain to the viewers who didn't get to hear you talk about that, like you talked to me about being broken.
In the year and a half that I spent in St. Augustine, living in the woods, I lived in a little village of people. And most people, one of the things they don't know is that the homeless people are probably, in my opinion, the most highly socialized group of people in America. We're like these weird little factional tribes. We're either warring tribes. We all have these friendships and relationships and complex structures. There's homeless women that live in this park. Living in their car, you know. They've been interviewed here before, but you know,
yeah,
they have our protection. People wouldn't know that kind of thing goes on, you know. So anyway, I met so many interesting people. I was amazed, hardcore homeless, at the myth about and the stereotype about homeless people. And I met every type of imaginable person out there, every background, race, creed, religion you can imagine, men and women, age groups, kids, you know, teenager, 18, 19-year-olds to 60 some odd. I'm up there. The average life expectancy for a homeless person in America, according to HUD, a couple years back, is 50, which is the same as it was in the turn of the century, 1900. From all of the elements combined. So I wanted to understand what it was that we had in common. Now, the assumption is that we're all a bunch of alcoholics and drug addicts. The statistics that HUD shows is
that you're bums and you're lazy.
We're bums and we're lazy. We don't want jobs. We don't want to work. And that's not true at all. There's certainly a percentage of individuals who do know, they do tend to propagate that by their behavior, and they are what I call disinstitutionalized people, professional hobos, people who have been out there so long that they either never had a real ability to integrate in society, or when they lost it, they've lost it for so long that they're afraid now to take on responsibility even for their own lives again. So it's just easier for them to stay out here. It becomes a place where the suffering that we go through out here, you know, which is deprivation sometimes, and don't think it's hunger, kids, because I just had this delivered to me by a man who does this from the goodness of his heart on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah. Homeless people are not hungry. They're not. Plenty of food. There's plenty of good people they want to give people food. It's not the truth.
And what is the thing that most homeless people need out here on the street? What is the thing that they're suffering or looking for?
I decided I wanted to know what it is we had in common, so I began to interview people, which is pretty easy to do. You have a few shots of vodka and you listen, and if you just listen, as you know very well, and you're an interviewer, people will tell you their stories, they'll tell you what happened to them. And so I began to journal all this stuff and write it down and keep making notes, and I'm hearing the same thing over and over and over and over again, all these different shapes and forms from people, and I came to the conclusion that every single person I knew out here, for the most part, suffered from a broken heart. And I believe that the heart is everything. I believe that the heart is the center, the spiritual energy, the center from which we all move and live and have our being and our strength moves from that. And once that's broken, it's very, very difficult. If you lost your heart, you know, that sounds hokey, broken heart, like, oh, she broke my heart. But literally, it's a state of brokenness.
And what do you think organizations and churches and the government is doing right, and what do you think they're doing wrong to heal those broken hearts and to get guys back into a normal life and back to work and off of drugs and alcohol?
Not much.
Not much.
What we have is an incredible amount of money being thrown at a bunch of very disorganized, very fragmented services. There's no integration of services. There's no real assessment of where people are in life. There's never even real assessment of whether or not someone has an interest in coming back to society. I think there's a common misconception that, yeah, we can fix these guys. You know, we just need to give them jobs and help them out and get them on their feet. There's a very large percentage of those people that don't want to go back, as I was mentioning. So I think...
So they're happy here on the street? They're happy existing this way?
If it comes down to making a choice... Or have they just kind of been
institutionalized to know this all?
They're deinstitutionalized, and they don't want to go back in society, and I don't care what you want to do for them, you can't fix that. You can't fix stupid. You just can't do it.
And where are you at on that? Have you become deinstitutionalized yet?
I have. I know about it because I've struggled a little bit with the reality of this fragmented system and trying to navigate our way through it. As an example, the first big myth is that there's only maybe, I think HUD says 40-something% of us out here are involved in drugs or alcohol. And I'm not talking about distribution. I know very, very few guys that are homeless that do drug distribution. I know very, very few guys out here that are criminals. They're pilferers, they're thieves, but they do it to survive. But my estimation would be more like 98%. Having lived with them and run with them, more like 98%. And I think I'm being generous as they have a drug or alcohol issue. That issue in itself, the first step is being placed in treatment to overcome that issue. The next thing needs to happen is some sort of midterm rehab, 3, 6, 9 months rehab to stabilize people, help stabilize their minds, and help them break out of and understand and have some education about how alcoholism or drug addiction affects our minds. And then they need some sort of transitional housing arrangement that can help them stabilize and get back into the work environment. And I'm talking about the people that want that. And if I had to guess from my research in Daytona Beach, because I started the infrastructure for a project called Project Outcast, and my goal in developing that was for integration of all these different fragmented organizations. Our police are tasked with managing the brunt of the homeless problem.
Right. And
in general, by government in general, because of the pressures from the constituency, we are kind of a blight, and blights need to be eradicated. And so we are constantly harassed, we are constantly arrested for minor infractions, open containers, public intoxication, constantly for trespassing. When you have nowhere to live, you got nowhere to live.
Right.
You're trespassing. We can be trespassed from any public place.
Right, because you cannot simply blink yourself out of existence.
That's correct.
You have to exist somewhere.
You do. And so they're tasked with that. I feel sorry for them. I wouldn't want to be a police officer and have to deal with us, because most of them, I believe most cops have pretty good hearts, and they don't want to have to implement the unspoken policies that have been handed down by the city fathers. Some specific counties have some really hardcore unspoken.
You told me you've seen busing of the homeless.
I've seen them bus,
where they will pick them up from one county or city,
drop them off and drop them off in another county. I have seen where police departments, St. Augustine PD included in this, will give you a bus ticket anywhere in the country on Greyhound if you will leave St. Augustine.
Really?
Yeah. That's their solution to the homeless problem. It's considered a blight.
And I've seen some cities I've seen some man, 90 years old, was arrested for feeding homeless in Tampa. They criminalize helping homeless.
If I take my sign out here and I'm hungry, I haven't eaten in a day, I think most of us eat about once a day on average. If I take my sign out there and say, just hungry, sorry to beg, I'm committing a crime.
Right.
In this town. And if someone stops to give me food or give me money, I'm committing a crime called obstructing traffic, solicitation. I can be trespassed. I can be in jail. If they check my blood alcohol content at the moment and I happen to be slightly over 8.8, I'm going to be arrested for 4 or 5 charges for being on the side of the road.
But if that sign says "fuck you, have a nice day," well, that's free speech.
Correct.
That's covered.
Correct.
And so it would seem to me, begging or asking for $1 versus stealing $1, I would much rather be asked for $1 than have $1 stolen from me. Which essentially, that's what you're doing, is you're asking for that $1. You're not going into a store and robbing it. You know, obviously with this sign, you in your mind you're thinking you're staying within the law, asking for it, being a peaceful person, being
Absolutely.
Reasonable, and just needing some help.
It's not only that. As human beings, here's what I think in general. I think we place too much on government. I think that the people, the society itself needs to stand up and take accountability and realize that the reason that we are all out here is because we are outcasts. The criminal justice system, which has been allowed to be in place, has criminalized us. When you criminalize us, it's incredibly difficult for me to get a job. I'm a guy that's used to make $150,000 a year. I couldn't get a job as a felon for $12 an hour as a carpenter's helper for a long time, which so discouraged me. So we criminalized these people and cut them off at every turn and made them desperate. And it's a blight. It's a huge blight. Their point-in-time surveys that HUD do in January of every year, where they hire a bunch of college kids to go out and do interviews, they're ridiculous. The number of homeless out there is so much further beyond what most of people imagine. They're everywhere. Homeless people are everywhere.
Yeah, because I was contacted in January, generally January of every year. For the past couple of years, I've been counted to do what's called a homeless census. And they want you to go out there, just like you said, with a clipboard, and they want you to go looking, whether you see worn down grass in there, find a tent, and count them for that day. But who's to say you're going to get all of them? It could be a really cold day, and they could be at the library. They could be at Walmart. They could be on the bus. Some ride the bus all day long to stay off the street. Some, I don't think any of the numbers are accurate.
No, they're not.
And they're seasonal.
I'll give you another reason.
And you're right, there are seasonal.
When you do a count in January, you're at peak season. We laugh. We have our own little joke about the snowbirds are here.
Oh, absolutely.
First, we know what the weather is up north by the number of homeless people that come pouring down here. They're the transient ones that we're generally. I fall in with a group of local guys who are a little more stationary. We kind of find a little territory we work and we're comfortable with. We kind of know where to go and where not to go. But these people just come pouring down here by the hundreds of thousands. So it greatly inflates the number. So it would seem like we have that number all year round. We don't at this time of year. We are at in this kind of heat. We are at our lowest homeless numbers for the state of Florida of any time of the year. They're all up north.
So let's talk about you and your situation specifically. What brought you here to Titusville? Why Titusville, and how long have you been in Titusville?
Let's see, 2.5 months. I run advertisements in Craigslist to contract with individuals. I specialize in doing yacht interiors. And very often I work out where I can live aboard the yacht that I'm working on. And I took on a project in Cape Canaveral. And that's been about 6 weeks ago. So I was traveling through and had several prospects. I had one here in Titusville, I had one in Cape Canaveral, one a little bit further south in Melbourne. And so I had run out of money I finished a project in the Keys. I was home for almost 2 years and working in the Keys. I completed that project and went on the road looking for a new project. And went on a road trip and spent almost 2 months with my children, helped them remodel my daughter's house and help build a kitchen for my son, and got just kind of you need physical togetherness for a family, to kind of reintegrate together and find that bond. And turned around and came back and went between Jacksonville and the Keys looking for work. I'm on felony probation for the charge that I took for 10 years, so I have to have permission for myself to go anywhere that I go. I had a relapse. It's hard for me because I have short-term memory loss to give exact times, but I had a relapse. I don't know, maybe Ron would know better than I would. Probably right after I took that project. few weeks after I took that project. It upset me pretty badly because of the level of progression in my disease. My slides are very short, fast. What used to take 6-8 months happens in a week now. You know, I go from I'll be drinking an entire bottle of vodka by day 2 in full 4 levels, and I can't drink enough beer to get drunk because my level, my tolerance is so high. And what actually happens to me is that it just makes me sick now. And then I go from, hey, I think I'm having a good time, to blackout. Don't remember anything. It's over. So I put myself in detox. Called my boss. I said, here. He was thrilled with me and my work. He was out of town. I said, look, I'm going to hurt myself here, and ended up kicking up a DUI before that happened. Put myself in detox. Excellent detox Epic Recovery Center in St. Augustine, Florida. Highly recommended as a regular detox customer. Great people, care about their people, and their big concern is, you know, trying to help avert relapses through long-term planning. And I couldn't get a transfer from my probation officer. We found a place for me in Cocoa Beach, sober living house for me to go to, but I couldn't get a transfer. She was just being a bitch, really. So I was back in the street, was here, living here, waiting for my court date. Well, missed a part. While I was in detox, my boss had emergency surgery, gallbladder taken out, found he's got probably cancer, pancreatitis, and shut down the project, and I lost my place to live. So I ended up back here a few weeks ago and relapsed again.
So you're a very well-spoken guy, very smart guy. What do you think it's going to take, or how do you think you can be helped? What could somebody do to help you? Like, what do you need to get back to that life that you had before, or do you think it will ever come?
I don't want the life I had before, because there's just far too much emphasis on me being this incredibly driven individual who is focused far too much on.
So what's your new vision then? What's your goal? Is your goal to live the way you are now, or is there something more you want to do with yourself?
Hell no. I've got at least 4 different potential business plans that I'd like to implement if I can string enough recovery together. I was able to do that at 8-month run, year run, like that. I look at alcoholism, hardcore alcoholism, as a war with a series of battles rather than just one battle. Because if you're going to take it as one battle and the first time you relapse, it's over. We got a 3-strike mentality here in America. 3 strikes and you're out. You go to detox 3 times, 3 you're done. Everybody's done with you. Family's done with you. Everybody does.
Too much focus on this number.
You become abandoned. And I think it's the opposite. I think if a guy keeps putting himself back in detox, everybody thinks detox is not a cakewalk. Okay? And putting yourself back in detox again and again. So what's happened with me is that my sobriety times have become longer. My relapse is less frequent and much shorter. And for me, if you ask me, how's the war going? Well, I may be out here with my buddies right now, drinking a beer, almost mosquito bitten and sick, but I'm winning it. And I wish a lot more of my brothers and sisters out here would understand that they can win it too by, you know, you got to get back to detox. You got to get yourself in a sober living environment. You got to get around family. The big thing my doctors and psychiatrists told me is that I got to get back to my family, because I'm alone here at 56 years old for the first time in my life. I have no social issues. I've got a bunch of psychos around me.
And do you have brothers and sisters? Are your parents still living?
I have a mother in a nursing home on the West Coast. My father's been gone for 20 years. I have a Down syndrome sister that's cared for by my stepfather in Texas. And then my 3 grown children, Georgia and South Carolina. But I don't have anybody here in the state.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you spending a few minutes and letting us get to know you. Is there any messages that you have for your friends, family that see this, or maybe to the viewing public in general? Is there any messages you'd like anybody to know? Anything you would like to speak about? Something we missed?
Just that homeless people are people, and they really hurt a lot, and they could use a lot more compassion than they're given. I'm a statistics guy, and I find that on average, when we go out, and I talk to my brothers and sisters about when we go out asking for help, we call it flying. Some people call it panhandling. We do numbers. I got a buddy Ron and I. We do numbers all the time, and we figure that if 1 out of 100 people that's passed us have not showed any kind of compassion at all, then we move on. But it's a pretty sad day when we're looking at 1 out of 100 that would reach out to somebody, and that's largely because of the myth, largely because of the stereotypes. And there's some people doing some really practical things, and I think that anything that we can all do together, especially the churches and especially organizations, the charitable organizations, if we could develop some integration and start working together, and start sponsoring people that really could use this help, because not everybody out here wants to come in out of the cold, but there's a lot of us that do, and that's all I want to say, man. Just if you see somebody out there, you don't. I know very few people out here that are truly bad people. The percentage of bad people is no different than it is in the general public. So we're just largely misunderstood. We're not bad people. Appreciate taking the time to interview me, Keith.